Good evening, all. The time is 6 p.m. I will call to order the March 24th meeting of the Huxley City Council. Roll call, please.
Murphy,
Here.
Mulder,
Here.
Rigler,
Here.
Etcher,
Here.
Roberts. Here.
Moving along, I am going to reorder one item under business item 5. I'm going to move item G as in ghost right after C as in Charlie. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion Etcher,
Give me a second.
second Roberts. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now is the time in the agenda for public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to speak this evening is certainly welcome to. Just ask that you limit your time to 5 minutes and start with your name and address. Anybody from the public wishing to be heard? Perfect. I will remind everybody this is a one-way conversation. It's your opportunity to let us know what your thoughts and concerns might be, but it's not an opportunity for council to respond. So just ask that you start with your name and address, please, sir.
All right, my name's Brad Lewis, and I'm with Palestine Lutheran Church. We're out at 1375 Highway 210. And I'm here to comment a little bit on the development that's going to the southeast of us. As we work through how this development's going to affect us, I guess basically we just have a couple requests, and the request is, I assume when you guys annexed that and approved changing the zoning and this and that you have done the traffic studies, and we've done the environmental studies and the water runoff study and the economic impact study. I would request that you guys just make that public so that as we work through ours, we can figure out how it's going to affect us. So that's really the only thing I have to comment on, and reach out to Dr. Eisenman or myself. We want to work with you, obviously, and figure that out. But we really would like to get that in front of us, because as we're looking to do some of the different things, we got to figure out how it's going to affect us. So thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
What this off?
You can leave it on. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Travis Tolliver with the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. I'm here just to remind you and the viewing public of the first ever Huxley Hop and Shop event happening this Saturday from 8 to 12 in North Carlson Park. We're doing this in conjunction with the city. We can have a lot of activities for the family, egg scavenger hunt, all kinds of wonderful things. And the first 50 families that come will receive 50 bags filled with different coupons and activities from local businesses, hoping that people will hop around the community during the spring season and shop local, shopping Huxley first. And so one of those bags would actually have a golden egg in it, and the winner of that golden egg will receive an Easter gift basket full of gift cards from local businesses. So again, this Saturday, March 28th from 8 to 12 at the park. Hopefully we'll see a lot of people there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Travis. Anybody else in the public wishing to be heard this evening on any agenda or non-agenda items? Okay, seeing no one rise, we will move along. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll offer a motion.
Motion Rigler,
Second.
second Mulder. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Rigler,
Yes.
Roberts. Yes. Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Mulder.
Yes.
Item 5A this evening is a proposal from Brent Hinson Consulting.
Brent's actually on the phone. Brent was hired to put together the compensation study. And he's got a meeting in Mason City tonight, so he's via phone. He's going to kind of go through. Barb's got the information that Brent's put together for the pay study that was put together for the cities. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent.
Standing. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me well. If you can't at any point, just let me know and I'll try to speak up better. But no, I appreciate the city bringing me on to assist with this. Basically, we had a two-part challenge here. Number one was to take a look at relative comparable compensation in other cities, comparable to Huxley. And then the other one was to develop a pay plan that'll kind of stand the test of time and be something that city can use for years to come. I've been involved in this process with a number of cities. The most recent one I would have done was Polk City, but I've also done Tipton, I've done Tiffin, I've done several for cities I've worked for as well. So basically what we did, we started out with the survey. So we looked at comparable entities to Huxley, and we really understanding that Huxley is a growing community. You're currently at a population of about 4,900 according to the census estimates, but you're not going to stay there forever. We wanted to take a look at kind of a banding of cities that were comparable now, cities that would be comparable in 2030, cities that would be comparable in 2040 to help develop our estimates and to come up with a fair compensation range. So I think we were very successful ultimately in getting a very comparable group. The 10 cities that we are looking at as comps, they're very consistent with Huxley, average about 5,200 in current population compared to your 4,900. Their estimated 2030 population is about 5,700 compared to your 5,600. And their estimated 2040 population is about 6,500 compared to your 6,800. So I think we got a very comparable group to look at. We looked at kind of all of their positions. So certainly we're emphasizing the positions that Huxley currently has, but I think the study, we structure this in a way that it's also useful for the future as your community grows. Probably your organization will grow. And so there may be positions that you look at adding, or there may be things that you contract out currently that you might bring in-house. And so this structure for the pay study, for the survey, really allows you to take a look at some of those positions that are contracted out. Like one example would be like building inspections or construction inspection. There are some places that have that as in-house. So now you can take a look at those positions and kind of get an idea of where those are compensated for when you're looking in the future. So kind of what we ended up finding from that, and I guess I'd stop here and just say, certainly feel free, if council has any questions, feel free to ask those as we go along. I'm going to try to be brief and not take too much of your time because I know you've got a remaining agenda here and I want to be succinct, but I'm happy to take any questions you have. But basically what we found from looking from an overall perspective, it's a little bit all over the place as far as kind of how you were rated against your comparables. I guess I felt good when I looked at this as, having helped you guys on the, your city administrator search and on your clerk finance officer search, that you were competitive in both of those positions. That's good because we wanted to make sure when we filled those positions that you guys were at a competitive level there. There's a number of other positions where you're really doing pretty well versus your comps, but then we did find a number of positions where there was a significant difference, several in particular. And so we wanted to make sure we gave you a plan. Then looking at this going forward, assuming that, the goal would be to try to provide, good competitive compensation across the organization, that we came up with a plan then to get those positions transitioned to, more of a market average salary, and also make it so it was financially sustainable for the city. All of these things are very important, especially in the, the times we live in here with kind of continuing property tax issues or kind of attacks on property tax revenue. It's a challenge, I think, for all of us in city government, but I think that, really we've still got to take a look at making sure that our employees are appropriately compensated and that, that we're doing what we need to kind of both hire and retain the, really good people that can do a great job, hopefully for a long time for the city. So as far as kind of your overall summary, looking at this, really, my understanding going into this was, the city had said we're going to try to do, 3.5% increases, but I know that 5% was worked into the budget for overall, just understanding that this plan was coming. So I tried to work with that to come up with a year one that would work well within that budget, and then also take a look kind of at the longer term, even though, kind of after year one, that will, be things that, we won't, none of that will be set in stone after year one. But at least to kind of figure out if the city adopted this plan that we came up with, what is the long-term impact? What does that look like? Certainly we want to make it something that, like I said, is both responsible to the employees, but also responsible to the taxpayers, and making sure that it's something that's financially sustainable for the city. So what we did is we took the positions, we took a look at what we would consider to be comparable positions, kind of banded those together as we looked at setting up a pay grade system. And then we also tried to kind of create some space for you for the future. Understanding that your organization will likely grow in the future, it's good to have some grades that are kind of in between, existing positions that would give you a chance to add positions in the future. Theoretically, if you looked and you decided, hey, we think even though, Brent classified this position in this grade, we think it should be a grade higher, that type of thing. It gives you that flexibility to kind of work with that a little bit and still keep a good overall system and not have to mess with it much in the future. Really the goal of this is to set something up that, kind of the way I did it with Tiffin, for example. We set up their pay plan back in 2019. I went after, I think, 5 years, I went back. They had me come back and just kind of reevaluate, take a look at some of the changes, some of the things that weren't predicted at the time that we did the original pay plan. And we just did a little bit of an update for them. So, you would certainly not have to do that if you felt like everything was working well. And like I said, the Tiffin pay plan, pretty much, we didn't change a lot. We just kind of moved a few things around and kind of adjusted to the new assumptions based on kind of how things had changed over 5 years. So really that's what we're trying to do. So the overall kind of thrust of what we're looking at, right now, if you take a look at your full-time positions, the city's, my estimate for what the city's paying in salaries for your full-time positions is $1,642,000. This proposed plan would be $1,725,000. So that's 5.05%. That was kind of the closest I could get to the 5%, with trying to keep everybody, kind of trying to keep the raises as appropriate and not have any of them be too low, try to fit all the grades, kind of try to make everything kind of mesh well as we looked forward. Then kind of from there, I did take a look at, okay, if we kind of band these certain positions together, now what are those absolute levels for the pay grades? Really what I did is I worked from a midpoint, that was kind of established based on looking at your comps. So I'm blending a few factors there, but I'm basically looking at your comps to help establish those midpoints of the ranges. and then kind of adjusting those down a little bit for each step down to the step one, which would be your entry level, and then adjusting it up incrementally the other way to get to the top of the range, proposed ranges, which would be your step 15. So I think that when you take a look at the overall results, it's a lot of pay steps, but I think the nice thing about that is you can work with this in the future. It kind of gives management some good, and the council good flexibility in the future that, you kind of look at this as, okay, this is, about every 2 years, maybe a little less than that. You've got on average, you're allowing a pay step. So that's good for the employee. They can kind of take a look and have an idea of where they'll be in 5 years if they stick with the organization. And it's also good for management because, you kind of know how that's going to move. You've got some discretion, but at the same point, it also gives you something to hang your hat on versus just kind of trying to arbitrarily select a number. So I think that kind of when we take a look at all of that, I think we end up with a pretty good blended scale that is, I think it makes sense. It's responsible. It kind of, I think represents, works well, kind of tries to take where you're at now and then transitions you to this plan, I think pretty seamlessly. We did also, at the request of Dave and Barb, add on the bottom, if you're taking a look at the proposed FY27 scales sheet that I had sent. We also took a look at the park and rec assistant and your maintenance position that are part-time positions, just to basically say they're not a salaried position, but basically we kind of put them on the scale as part-time positions. So essentially that park and rec assistant is shown at a grade G. And then your maintenance position is shown at a grade C. And so then I just transferred those into an hourly basis. So it was easier to look at and ultimately kind of put those on the scale as part-time positions. So I guess that's kind of the overview of that. And then kind of the final part of that is I wanted to try to come up with, again, while nothing after kind of FY27 pending council approval would be kind of set in stone, I wanted to provide a 5-year prospectus of what this looked like. Basically, that's the compensation plan costing sheet. And so what I did is took a look, just trying to take a spitball at, there's a few of your positions, like I said, that were definitely low, that I wanted to try to get moved up to a, market average salary within the period of the plan here, et cetera. And so basically where we end up with, if you increase, so there's a column that says FY26 actual pay. Obviously I think that's evident what that is. FY31 is where that would be projected just by this analysis I did for each of those positions. That could very easily be different just depending on step raises, et cetera. And then that baseline 3.5%, that's just looking at if you just increased your current salaries by 3.5% a year, then here's what the salaries would be. And so then that subtracting my FY31 projected with your baseline 3.5% total gives you the net cost of the plan. So basically what I'm saying is over 5 years, I believe the net cost of this plan is probably about $140,000. So I think that when we look at that in the total, scope of what your compensation is now, how many positions you have, et cetera, I think that's a pretty manageable number. But I guess that's kind of where we ended up on this. And then ultimately, how we'll keep this kind of an evergreen scale and system is that I'm proposing that we then take the Midwest CPI, so that's Midwest Consumer Price Index, so it's Midwest CPIU, that is a cost of living, scale that is It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes each month. And basically you just take the November year over year to determine how much the scale would move each year. The nice thing about November over November is that you have that information by the time you're doing budget. That will come out kind of like mid to late December of each year. So you'll know going into your budget prep exactly how much that scale will move for the coming year. So I guess that's kind of the whole overview. I've tried to be as efficient as I can. Hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Brent. Any questions from council?
Thanks for the overview. Being here as long as I have, I feel like this is just a model that we had way back in the day. It's a merit step increase where people, and it allows for the city to budget more effectively. So I always did like that model system. We moved away from that. We then went into a table of a percentage based on performance measures on whether or not you met that increase. So overall, I'm hearing you say this replaces cost of living increase with a step either every 1 to 2 years based on what the city chooses. And then for the city, we would have to then determine, does insurance get paid from the employee or more from the city? Am I stating that correctly?
Yes. Oh, actually, you raise a good point, because one thing that we did do that I kind of skipped over was we did ask the comp cities kind of where they were at on insurance in terms of their employer contribution and their employee contribution. And essentially what we found is Huxley is right at the average right now. So like if you take a look at the overall, I have that actually on the salary survey sheet. But basically what we found, you guys, believe it or not, seem to have lower cost employer or I'm sorry, family coverage than what the average was. But, the good news here was that, you were about 16%, 16.06% employee share of premium. And your averages it's right about 15% is what your comps were charging their employees. So I think that from an overall perspective, you should feel pretty good that you're competitive, but not, you're not over generous, but you're not under generous. So that would be a point that I failed to make.
Nothing further. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts. Any other comments or questions from council? All right. Well, with that, Brent, I will thank you very much for your work on this, and thank you very much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and happy to help however I can in the future, but I'll kind of get this pending your approval, just basically get this finalized and get that to Dave and Barb, and we can go from there.
All righty, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Can I ask for clarification? Not from Brent. I'm good with what he's provided. Did we just agree to the plan or we just agreed to, okay, thank you. Just agreed to take his
No, Brent's
information.
kind of provided it, and it was just for you to kind of absorb tonight. We'll have to discuss if you like it, if you want to see some changes, whatever, before we finalize it.
Thanks.
Okay, moving along this evening, need a motion to approve resolution 26028. This is regarding the Brendelen property and Project Lion. It's tweaking the tweaking the approved amended plat slightly to allow for some public utility infrastructure and roadways. So need a motion on this?
I'll give you a motion.
Motion, Mr. Mulder.
1 second.
Second, Mr. Murphy. Any questions or?
I would just note, so back on the 24th, we approved the plat survey for parcel, I believe E is for the infrastructure for the lift station and the booster pump station. And we also had in the road right away. Even before you had done that, we had kind of talked with the family and we were looking to reduce that infrastructure need at parcel E down to about 15,000 square feet. Come to find out, we need a larger turnaround at the end of the east-west street. So we basically did a swap of 3,000 square feet each way. which gives them, if a semi would to happen to go up the east-west road and not be going into vortex, you'd be able to take a tractor trailer and turn around before you get there at the end to head back out. And we reduced then down to 12,000 square feet. Forrest said that it fit, so we're recommending approval of the amendment to the plat of survey.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mulder,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Okay, item 5C this evening, I need a motion to approve resolution 26029, approving the North Park Row LLC site plan at 908 US Highway 69. That's formerly the Madrid Home property. Need a motion.
I'll give you a motion.
Motion by Murphy,
I'll offer a second.
second by Rigler.
I would just like to note, maybe even before Abby speaks. So when we were at P and Z, well, prior to P and Z, there was talk. We had an initial meeting. We had talked about the water that we hadn't really discussed looping the water. But as we got the site plan, we kind of looked at, Jeff made a point that it makes sense to kind of loop that. It protects our system. I mean, it does have a benefit to Abby. So, basically, you know, we kind of talked, it really wasn't in this. So with phase two, she will extend that water main, but that is a public improvement that we've asked for. So I told her that I would be willing to bring forth a TIF agreement just for that public water. Because we've asked her to loop it around and improve our system, but also it will help her a little bit. And then on the sidewalk, there was some sidewalk that would be on 908, but she's got a plan that will come with the next phase, which we met with Abby and Michael, who's here tonight, her engineer, Forrest and I met with him yesterday. We should be seeing that site plan here shortly, and I think they're hoping to get it to P and Z, I think in April, to have the site plan for the project going north. So with that, I would just, if Abby had anything that she wanted to add, or if you have any specific questions on myself or Abby, we're here to answer.
Ms. Gilroy, anything to add this evening? Okay, any questions or discussion from council on this?
So tonight's just the three items, the water main, the 66 stalls, if I read that right? And then the detention basin.
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
sidewalks.
you're approving the site plan subject to these things, but like I said, with the sidewalks and the water main, that will be addressed as we go with the next phase.
Thanks.
But P and Z did feel like because of the number of units that she has, that instead of 70, they felt the 66 parking was enough for that, so.
Any further comments?
On the sidewalks, I wonder, I mean, we hope that it's coming in April. You know, I wonder if we should put a time frame on that, say if it was done within a year or something, you know, so that we could put a limit on that so it doesn't slip away. Yeah, and we hope that everything's done in the right, but you never know.
So, sidewalk, yes, I am working to tie that into the property to the north. And, it will show up on the site plan, which we're supposed to have at the end of the week. Everyone look at him, making. So we will have that, and it shows kind of how it will navigate through the site. And we'll discuss that when we come back with that site plan. I think it's a little bit safer route for the community. It helps kind of cut through the site versus going along the highway and dead ending at the bank, because right now there's a sidewalk in front of that bank. We want to kind of talk through that a little bit in the next phase, but, so that all needs to tie together well. And I don't want to drop a chunk here and talk about the next chunk and tear up potentially what we've done. So hopefully you'll just allow us to do that, and we'll have that in the next site plan. Otherwise, yeah, the water main, we met yesterday. We all understand what you're seeking there. Our initial talks were to pull water from North Park. But this loop will allow us to pull it out of along Highway 69. So if it improves your system and we can tap off of it, great. Otherwise, we'll go into North Park and get the water there. And then parking wise, yeah, like Dave said, we were about 4 short. These units are all 300 to 400 square feet. We have a few two beds that get into like 700 square feet. So I don't see a lot of, people doubling up in these units much, so I think that will be sufficient with the 66. If we find an issue, we are adding parking to the north property. When you see that site plan, there's additional parking at the south end. Or if there is an overflow issue or something, we can certainly accommodate them still on site. It would just be across the way, so. Nancy was accepting of all those things.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, before I call the vote, any further comments? Roll call, please.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
The next few items are regarding the water treatment plant, and as I indicated, I'm going to move item G up next. So need a motion to approve resolution 26033, approving the professional service agreement with V&K for the water treatment plant.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Etcher,
Give you a second.
second by Mr. Murphy. David?
Okay, I have provided you with a lot of information and actually what I'm proposing tonight is different than the resolution that you see. Kind of going back, I guess in history, I tried to provide a lot of the information from when this started. So back in September of 2020, the city signed a agreement with V&K to design the water treatment plant. It also covered the resident review and inspection costs and all of that. And at that time, in 2020, they felt like that plant could be built in 18 months. And that was in the agreement that was approved back in September of 20. Jump forward almost a year to the day, in September of 21, they had the bids had come out on September 9th. The engineer's estimate at that time, a year later, was that the plant was estimated at $9 million. They received 4 bids. All of those bids were in excess of $10 million. Woodruff was low at $10,053,000. There was BRB was at 10,994. There were also 2 alternates that were added, one for West Tech, one for Tonka. And it was my understanding that the city's preference was to go with West Tech, which made their bid at the 10, whatever that was, 10,995. I then provided you with the minutes. A gentleman from Shank Construction had come and looking, even though their base bid was higher than Woodruff, they were a little lower on alternate B. That was not the city's preferred. He asked the city to consider alternate B. Ultimately, that evening, the city went on to award this contract. And from those minutes, I just want to highlight, and 3 of you were here and you lived through it, so you know it. But there was a motion to award the contract. Mr. Mulder had expressed some concern on the project being over budget. Councilman Kuhn at the time stated his concern with the high cost of the project and felt the city should utilize some conservation tactics at this time in lieu of the expansion. Ultimately, it was taken to a vote and it was voted 4-1, so it was approved. I gave you copies of those bids. I think they're in your packet. I think I provided them to you again. I just want to note, so we talked about the engineering agreement had been done. Jeff had pointed out that in that original agreement from a year, it talked about the 18 months. When the project was bid, it gave a completion of, that was water and completion of about 26 months. At that time, it would have been prudent on everybody's part to realize that we that the city had approved a contract that was going to be 8 months longer than what was originally thought when Forrest and V&K had put together their cost estimate for the resident review. They could have come back and asked for some additional compensation to be considered at that time. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. So I looked at it from a standpoint of looking at what was proposed for the construction services fee. If you prorated that and you added the additional time to go to 26 months from the 18, technically, I mean, they might have been entitled to $133,644 more for the resident review to cover that 8 months. Forrest actually went back through today and looked at what the actual cost for those 8 months were. He came up with 33,260, along with the mileage for a total of 35,453. There were a couple things that they had agreed to cover in the cost. It was $7,700 for a couple chlorine pumps that were undersized, and then to pay for a respirator that was needed. V&K's willing to take that off of the 35,000, and really what Forrest is asking for is 25,337. Their actual cost over that time period was almost $80,000. But they're willing to just get this over and end and settle it. He's willing to go for 25,000. I know Jeff has some other thoughts regarding this, but I think when it comes down to it, the fact that a year later, and the construction time period was extended, they were entitled for more money for resident review. He's greatly reduced the charges to the city. I think overall, from the bid to your final cost, I mean, your changes are amounting to like 0.00 something. I mean, it's very minimal. It's kind of unheard of. Now, there were some things the city did. The city did some work all along. They reduced some things and added, but my recommendation is to change the resolution to pay Forrest what he had reduced it down to, which was the 25,337. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'm sure Jeff is too.
So the only outstanding costs are V&K at this point? Or do we also owe Woodruff?
So you'll have Woodruff. So we have a change order, and we had paid off some of their retainage early. We held 100,000. There were some meetings that were held. There were several meetings held. I got involved recently, visited with Jake and then with Jeff. Grant came to the table. They offered a little bit more. So out of that 100,000, we're going to end up paying them a little over 55,000 of that retainage to call it good. So it keeps the contract price. Like I said, the contract price is almost spot on to what the original price was.
So I'm just trying to remember back. Woodruff at one point came and we agreed to pay them. Was that a separate than this 55?
Well, so their retainage was more than 100,000 originally. So they wanted to get some subs paid while we were kind of working through this. So we released their retainage down to 100,000. So we kept 100,000 to have that dialogue between the city and Woodruff. And what we ended up with is we're getting credits for almost $45,000.
Okay,
And
I wanted to make
and we'll pay them 55,000 out of that remaining 100 that was part of the retainage that was being held. And Grant's here. He and I talked. He's sitting in the back. He was agreeable. He upped from their initial meeting. Jake wanted some additional money for cleaning skids, and he agreed to do that. And I think we're good to go from my perspective.
So as it relates to, as it relates to this resolution, David, resolution 26033, that's approving an amount of 35,569. Is that the figure that you were looking for?
The figure I would be looking for is 25,3. Let me get to it. 25,337. And that is with V&K covering the cost of those chlorine pumps. So they were originally looking for 35,453, subtracted out 7,700 for the chlorine pumps and 2,416 for the respirator that was purchased, leaves a balance of 25,337.
Okay. And just for my records, Barb, can you remind me who made the motion and second on that?
Yes, Councilman Etcher made the motion and Councilman Murphy made the second.
Thank you. Questions from council?
So Jeff, can you and Jake elaborate anything on this?
I think the only thing is we're not saying that Forest isn't worth what they did. I guess all along, we just felt like this plant came in at 2 million than what we originally anticipated. And at that time, it was because of the COVID and everything was supposed to be on task. And we talked to the suppliers, there was not going to be an issue to get this stuff here. We accelerated this project so we can get water because we were in our conservation ban. And we just felt like we didn't think the city should have to pay that. We didn't do anything wrong. And we felt that this should be resolved between B&K and the contractor. And we just felt as a whole, even going back with Keith with here, that we, did our best. We didn't hold anything up. We felt things could have moved along quicker, and that's kind of where our stance was. So we're just at that point that, money's money. I'm just trying to do the stewards of the city the best we can to keep money for our taxpayers and our rate users. And we just felt like this was something that we aren't arguing with forced time or anything. We're just thinking that this should have been a contractor thing and not a city having to pay this. So that's why we just brought that up. So I just want to bring that up and have a little note out with a little history of what kind of happened back in the day and what the expenses were so much higher. And we assumed that we kind of quantified that and by accepting the project instead of holding it off and, wait another year or two to do it later, you know what I mean? So.
And I appreciate Jeff looking out for the city's dollar. I truly do. But at the same token, like I'd mentioned, that contract for V&K services should have been upped when they approved that contract in 21 and it wasn't. And I think, it could have gone to 133. I mean, they legitimately could have asked for 133,000. I'm assuming council would have given them that based upon the proration of showing that time from 18 months in the original to what was approved in the contract that was signed going to 26 months. Now, granted, the project lasted longer than that, but I think Forrest is willing to waive a lot of that. And actually his total cost, even for extending that period, was still less than what he could have asked the city to at least approve back in 21. But I do appreciate everything Jeff's done. I appreciate the work that Jake's done since he kind of took over for Keith. It's been a long process. I think everybody just wants to resolve it. And we just both wanted to kind of say our piece and see where council wants to go.
So I got a question. You talked about the $100,000 we held back and then that Woodruff is going to get 55,000 of that.
Yeah, that was part of their original. So their retainage amount was quite a bit higher and we reduced it not quite a year ago.
Okay, 255.
Yeah, we reduced it down to 100 and that was and then we had some meetings to discuss some things that staff had issue with and they kind of worked through those things. They've had several meetings. And
So this retainage fee, the 100,000, there's 45,000 left in that. Can we pay that to Forrest's company, the 25,000 that you're asking now? So
I mean, the money, you've got money in the project fund, so you're gonna give, if you approve the change order for Woodruff and then their final pay request, paying them the 55. Yeah, there's money in the project account then that would cover.
that's what I'm
There's
saying.
$100,000 there. There's $100,000 there. Right now. That's what he's at.
Well, there's $100,000 technically that was retainage that was owed to Woodruff. We've come to a negotiation to get that down
So
to,
technically Woodruff is going to be paying for this because you're not going to be getting that additional 45,000. So I would say close deal. He's going to get the 25,000 out of the remaining
Well, it's-
45,000.
it's just the retainage, there's just an amount that was owed. It's hard to say that it's coming from who to where. It's just that, we have, the bills that I'm recommending that we're gonna pay is the 55,000 for the retainage, because we've negotiated that down.
Okay, so out of this
Several times.
$100,000
And then,
retainage
and then
fee,
I'm asking, the city consider paying Forrest the 25,000 that he's asking for, even though it could have been quite a bit more.
okay, so I guess I'm a little unclear, maybe I'm kind of dumb about this, but that $100,000 retainage fees. Okay, where is that sitting now? And what,
Building project fund.
It's in a,
So-
it's
so it's in a-
building
it's in a
project
fund.
Yeah, yep.
so we can use that.
Oh, yeah,
To pay
absolutely.
for. So that would be my recommendation.
Retainage typically is amount owed to the contractor for whatever they supplied, whether it's work or
Right.
services.
Yep.
Or equipment.
Well,
That's
services.
to them based off
Mhm.
of invoice price and everything else. So we held 100,000 back.
Okay.
That they've already performed work for. And now we're just going to work through the rest of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So to clear it up, we owe them 100,000 with the expenses we incurred and things that we did that we thought on the project. Out of $100,000, we agreed to 55 of it coming back to the city for things that we did.
45.
Or 45, I'm sorry.
45.
They'll get 55, so the 25 would come, from somewhere else. It wouldn't come out of the retainage.
Well, I mean, I would hate, it's hard to say that it's retained. There's just money in the project fund to close out the project. So it's kind of semantics of how you get there. So
Is that zero out of our project fund? Or does the rest of it go back towards the bond of the project? Debt service?
So we still have a payment for that fund coming from the county, from county ARPA funds. So the fund will be closed out once everything, we'll zero out the fund once everything is said and done and we have all the money in.
yeah, as a part of this project, there was a well field project was a part of this as well. They were bid about the same time. And the county contributed $500,000 towards the well field. We've received 409,000. I just, now if we get this closed out, we will submit our last pay request from the county to get our remaining money to get the $500,000 that they pledged towards the project.
And again, I'm just trying to clarify, any money's left over, does that go back to debt service or what are you planning on doing with it?
There won't be any monies left over. Because the project right now is $132,935 in the red. So there will be some additional money have to come from somewhere to make up that difference.
You guys have some pretty fuzzy math. I just thought I sat here and heard that we had $100,000 in the fund and now I'm $130,000 negative with money coming in from the county.
This is what the fund balance is.
So somewhere along the line, somebody's not in tune to what's going on, or maybe I'm not in tune to math.
No, there's a negative 132,000.
So a negative 132,000, and we're gonna do another negative 55,000, then the negative 25,000. And then positive 90,000, so we're still gonna be about 140 to 150 shy.
And what did the total come in at?
The
Does that make
total,
it clear?
I mean, what's the total did they add?
Sorry about that.
I like the number.
Well, I know, but I'm just,
so
What was that?
it makes a big difference if we're positive or negative as far as I'm concerned.
they sold bonds, yeah, but the problem with there were bonds in there, but the problem. Once I got here and talked to the auditor, like $400,000 of those bonds were supposed to be put into the bond reserve, and that's what ate up a lot of that money.
And that was the prior.
Yes, that was prior to my arrival. So
Okay.
the bonds were, the bond money that was to be transferred to the bond reserve was never transferred, so it always looked like there was substantial money left in there. In that project fund.
Can I ask one last question? And where are we gonna fund this hundred and so-called 50,000 negative?
Gonna have to come out of water.
What was what was the money you were talking about getting back to us now? After this was done, we were gonna draw down
There
funding.
should be a little over 91,000 coming back from the county that would go into this fund.
So now we're
Cover
at
distance.
60,000-ish.
No,
No.
because you started off with 136 negative.
Yeah.
Then you're adding another
75.
25,000 negative. And you're
You're
adding
about,
another,
you're about 200. If you're at 132 or at 55 and 25, that's 80. Puts you a little over 212. Yeah, you're gonna be a little over 100,000 plus it's gonna be owed. And that's because prior members did not take the bond proceeds like they were supposed to and put them into a reserve account.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Etcher to approve resolution 26033. Mr. Etcher, do you wish to amend your motion to modify the amount from 35,569 down to 25,337?
Yes.
Okay, and the second was by Mulder. Do you concur?
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, Murphy. Concur. Thank you. Any further comments or discussion on this item? Hearing none, roll call please.
Rigler,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Mulder.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along, I need a motion to approve resolution 26030. It's a resolution approving change order number 3 for the water treatment plant. Need a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion Etcher,
Second.
second Mulder. Forrest? That'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Forrest Alter, Convene Strang Kim. So I think Dave kind of described things pretty well already. We had a sit down with myself and with representatives from Woodruff, who are here tonight, and with city staff. Went through pluses and minuses over the last end of the project and came up with a deduct change order in the amount of amount of 40, yeah. Yep, 40. The right page. Yes, $44,972. And we'd recommend acceptance of a deduct change order in that amount. And there's an attachment A, and it is a very long list, a lot of things in there. I tried to spell them out as best I could so they'd be a little better to understand. I'm more than happy to answer any of those questions you might have on any particular item with those, because yeah, there's 2.5 pages of things.
Any questions? Okay, anything else on that?
No.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I do have a motion. Do you have a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Roberts,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Rigler.
Yes.
Moving along, need a motion to approve resolution 26031. It's a resolution approving payment application 41 for the water treatment plant. Need a motion.
I give you a motion.
Motion Mulder,
I'll offer a second.
second Rigler. Forrest?
So as been previously discussed, we withheld $100,000 in retainage. I mean, that money was part of the original bid, and we withheld that to make sure all the work that was remaining was completed. With the reduction of the change order just previously approved, the amount due is $55,028. and recommend approval of that pay estimate. And that would be the final pay estimate for the project.
I'll make a motion.
Nope, we're good on that. Any questions or discussion? You're good. Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mulder,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Okay, need a motion to approve resolution 26032. It's a resolution approving the certificate of completion for the water treatment plant. Ms. Roberts
Make the motion.
was making that motion for me. Thank you. Second,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Mulder. Forrest.
So with that change order, the final amount of the contract with Woodruff Construction is in the amount of $10,997,263.28. If you remember, the original bid was 10,995 something, 400, I think. So within a couple $1,000s of where we all started 5 years ago. It's been a long journey.
Perfect. Any further comments or discussion on the acceptance of the certificate of completion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
While you're there,
Okay.
any department reports from you this evening?
Piece. Wasn't quite ready for that, but while I'm here, we continue to work on 560th and the roundabout. And we're continuing to work with the DOT on that traffic study. So I understand the comments that were made this evening. Maybe he must have left. So we will continue to share that information as it's available and as it's ready. So yes, we very much are listening to and hearing what they're saying.
Perfect. I
That's
appreciate
all I
that.
had this evening.
Thanks, sir. Any other staff reports? Ms. Kathy?
Next year.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Any other staff? Is the school aware for bus traffic? Okay, thank you. All right, appreciate that update. Thank you. Any other staff this evening? Erin? Thank you, ma'am. Barb?
Well, going along with Kathy's property tax update, there were 2 bills that were very inactive. We hope that would not make it through the second funnel, but they were put on the unfinished business list. And one of those is the what we call the I-8 bill, which restricts the amount of money that a public entity could invest in iPaid, and the other one is our SUDAS bill. So we'll keep a watch for those. There are 2 active property tax bills right now. They're continually being amended, and hopefully tomorrow there will be some. Piper and Sandler did some modeling for the League of Cities, and I should be able to get that tomorrow and plug some numbers in and send you to see what the effect of those bills might be.
Thank you, Barb. David?
The only other thing I would note is, I'll be at a conference in Iowa City the rest of the week, going down tomorrow for IMMI. It's the really good educational one that Tim Shields started back in 1989, and they continue to provide good quality programming. So I'll be in Iowa City. If you need to get a hold of me, please call me on my personal cell phone. I will send you an email with that number again, even though I know you all have it, but I'll send it to you in the morning.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Murphy?
I don't want to bear any more bad news today, so I'll pass.
Appreciate that. Mulder?
Good, thanks.
The only thing I will pass along is just a congratulations to the Ballard boys basketball team, won state, and I believe I saw it's the first time the Ballard boys have ever won state. So quite an accomplishment. So congratulations to all those involved. With that, that will conclude our regular business for this evening. We do have 4 work session items, including 2 presentations. The first is by PFM. These are 2 firms that are vying for this contract. So I would ask the other firm to step out and vice versa. So appreciate that. So up next in the work session here, we've got a presentation by PFM, Mr. Chip Schultz.
Sorry about that. All right, thank you. So we're a municipal financial advisor. So our role is to be a fiduciary to the city. That's actually codified in the federal law. So our interest at this point are any interest of the city. We have to abide by your interest, even above our interest, above the underwriter's interest, above the bank's interest, above the developer's interest. And so we represent the city. In fact, that's been codified. So we all are here Series 50s. Exam. So if we don't abide by that rule, we can lose our license, quite honestly, lose our job. So we take that very seriously. And we've been, over the years, been thought we were always had a fiduciary responsibility to the city, but they put that in law during with the Dodd-Frank rules. We also, for tonight, take this you very seriously. We have a project team that's going to back up Chip. In fact, the crew over there, that's Carrie. She's our, 4 years, Carrie? You've been 5 years now. Time's going by fast. We also have Nick. He just passed the Series 50. So if you have any questions about the federal law, ask Nick because he just passed the exam, I think 2 months ago. And we also have Trey here as well. That's the project team that's going to be backing up Chip. We actually have 10 people in our office. We have 3 other project managers. So in the event Chip wants to take off and have a vacation, there's someone else that you can call. I took off and got married for 2 weeks, and my team kept the clients going while I was getting sunburnt on the beach. So it's nice to have a team and have people that are backing up, but take care of the city's needs when we're out of the office. We also, what you'll notice, Chip, in the handout that he handed, we work with a lot of different cities. We work with a lot of large cities, a lot of smaller cities. I just have a handful of that I thought would be relevant to you. We work with the city of Hampton. We work with the city of Webster City. We worked with Lakeview, which is a smaller community. We're doing some financial planning there on their water and their electric utility. Elkhart, which is a community here real close. They're focused on financial planning because the metro's growing into them. So they want to know what that means to them in terms of what they can accomplish. City of Ames, City of Spencer. We also work with Remsen, a recent community, Alta, and Marcus. So what you'll notice, we work with a lot of smaller cities, a lot of larger cities, a lot of metro cities, and a lot of cities in the rural Iowa as well. And then the last thing I would say is our goal has always been try to be an extension of your staff. We're here to serve you. We're here to serve the city staff to meet your objectives. I spend probably 60% we do bond transactions, but we spend probably 60%, if not more, financial planning. We want a sustainable road program that we want to sell $2 million every couple of years. We have I think you guys have already dealt with your treatment plant, but a lift station that's $5 million, that's 5 years out. What should we be doing today on those? We run economic development models for folks. And then as Barb indicated, there's legislative proposals that have lots of fun stuff in them to limit your revenues, to drive down your tax rate. In fact, the one I just heard on the amendment you mentioned is they're going to, I think, eliminate the foundation levy, the $5.40 out of your TIF rate, which means your TIF revenue is going to fall in addition to the city rate, I think the county's rate. So that's going to go down. So what does that mean to your TIF fund? Are you losing 30%, 20 to 30% of your revenue? How does that affect your debt payments? We have some cities that maybe be struggling to pay their debts. Some people are going to be struggling to pay their developers. And what does that mean to you? So we have models, and I think Chip has models that he's going to share with you that he's built to help you understand some of those consequences. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the person you really want to hear from, and that's Chip Schultz.
So we first of all also just want to share, we appreciate being able to speak with the council this evening and your staff. The first financing I worked on for the city of Huxley was in 2002 to finance the building of this building. Huxley, as you can see from the focus that we have here, Huxley is a really important client to me. It mirrors a lot of the work I've done in my career, and I've done every city new money financing. Didn't do a refunding financing in 2017. Every new money financing since 2002. Slide 4 outlines some of the review of the financial services that we provide. I think that's pretty straightforward. I don't need to repeat what's on the slide. On the water treatment plant they had on your agenda tonight, I think I was between staff meetings and council meetings, I was at between 18 and 20 meetings in the 2020, 21, 22 timeframe. The council probably got tired of seeing me at that point in time, but I was here to partner with you and to see that project through in the best way that we could, financing it with a combination of water revenue debt that you now have the reserve fund set up for, and general obligation debt. The average rate was 1.67% for that combined project. I'll skip to slide 6. That reviews the list of financings that I've worked on for the city overall historically. A couple milestones that have been reached. Everyone is aware, looking at the history, the city has had a lot of debt issues in the past. City is more debt averse now. That's clear, and that's a great thing. That's why we're better suited as municipal advisors to fit you in that mold. When you're doing annual appropriation debt, that I made that work, was able to get good access to the bond market for those financings. What tracks in more recent memory are your water revenue financing in 2021 was the city's first rating ever. The city was able to achieve an A underlying rating from Standard & Poor's, and we got bond insurance to wrap it to be a more cost-effective financing. First general obligation rated financing was in 2022 for the part of the water treatment plant financing. That was an S&P A+. I felt like the city is a AA credit. I've seen the potential of the city for years. You folks all see that. So in 2025, last year, Public Works building, that was the city's first AA rating at Moody's AA3. That fits more of a mold of taking your financings to competitive sale. I think in our competitor's proposal, there's a slide that reviews pricing for 3 financings. I think ultimately, inadvertently, what that slide proves out, competitive sales are better for the city of Huxley. We handled 2 of those financings on that slide, Webster City and City of Council Bluffs. The underwriting fee for the City of Council Bluffs is more $8 per bond or 0.8%. That's more what we would see on a typical competitive sale financing. And that helped drive down the cost for the city's taxpayers and ratepayers, ultimately leading to lower issuance costs. Slide 7 reviews some of the background. You've already had this. I don't need to go over every piece, but working through I helped the city finance over $18 million of general obligation debt from 2019 to 2025 in the context of both having a reduced debt service levy and reduced annual TIF asking. That was a lot to accomplish and a lot to take on, but the city made it through quite well and quite successfully. What you've moved from is having to issue general obligation debt to fund the projects the council chose at that point in time to being a AA rated credit. Our team, you can see what a focus we have here for the city. We're here to help you continue to navigate that path forward as you contemplate your financing steps. Also, what I've worked on a lot with Mr. Hogan is a series of TIF rebate calculations. The one for 120 South, or Anthem, as it's called, I think your attorneys at Dorsey and Whitney called that I think almost a PhD level TIF rebate analysis. That I was there for the city in a fairly short turnaround to get this completed. And that's led to the project as it's developed to date. No city bond issue, all self-supporting from any new taxes. So that's helps protect the city from a TIF rebate standpoint. I'll skip ahead to slide 8. What we think you'll see, what the city has not had in the past are two features. And these are determined by the city. They're not required, not recommended. It's ultimately up to the city if you choose to have two items which you've not incurred as expenses on your past financings. Disclosure council complete work in the official statement and underwriters council. So those are 2 costs that we would be involved in the financing. What we outline is this assumes the public works facility financing last year. We've included what we estimate would be our municipal advisory fee in row 9. Row 11 is the underwriting fee for a competitive sale in column C at 0.75%, very close to the Council Bluffs sample versus a negotiated sale. And with the comparison overall applied to an actual city financing from last year, your savings is right in the range of $18,250. I think that's pretty straightforward and speaks for itself. But does anybody have any questions on that slide? Okay. The next items review some features about our firm. I think those are fairly straightforward. I just would recap with what's on a few items with what's on from the presentation, what's on slide 12. Experience with the city, familiarity, and more of an in-depth team. You need more responsiveness than from one person. That's a risk I think the city had in the past. That's why the team's here to serve you. The familiarity with the city's continuing disclosure requirements, that is incredibly important with regulators. I know those and can help, translate those and get you ready to go for continuous disclosure on day one. I know some of the council, I think a lot of you in various ways are more debt averse than what the council was years ago. Help the city navigate the payoff of 2 financings from cash on hand. That's listed in the work as well. And then the rebate work that I've completed for the city is toward the bottom of the slide, simply just to kind of a reemphasis of the familiarity and work that I've provided the city in the past. Behind slide 2 in the presentation, slide 14 is some of our central Iowa clients. I think sometimes we're a little bit misidentified as central Iowa clients only, just because we work for the city of Des Moines. Last Friday, a PFM colleague and I met with the city of Clear Lake Sanitary District, the city of Esterville, city of Emmetsburg. John and I, the past 2 days, have had a bond sale yesterday at the city of Hull in Northwest Iowa. We're at a marathon of places today. We're Remsen, Marcus, Alta Utilities, Lorenz Utilities, Spencer Municipal Utilities. We do work all across the state. That's what we want to try to emphasize. Slide behind that lists our clients overall across the sampling across the state. And then section 3 is a listing out of our project team. Then section 4 is information about PFM as a firm. What's most important, perhaps as loose sheets in the back of the handout, we want to emphasize that we're ready to go for the city on day one. If fortunate enough to be engaged, this will look familiar. It's familiar work with what I've provided the city in the past. That's a debt levy planning model, includes your existing debt only, including the public works facility, lays out the city's historic debt levy in column G in the gray shading, estimated abatements from TIF in column I, and then a future forecast of your debt levy, again, back in the forecasted years in column G. Historic valuation is at the bottom left of the page. Your base, your TIF, and your total taxable valuation. A nice recap of rollback at the bottom center of the page. And then at the bottom right, a recap of those general obligation bond issues that are paid for by TIF. The other two sheets are, we just were at this, or 2 bid tabulations for competitive sales. This is what you get when you have a drive in competition. We're trying to be adaptive to the current financial state of the city, which is excellent. Your Moody's AA3. These reflect competitive sales from recent sales we've handled for the city of Hull. I think in total there were 31 bids among the various underwrite. The Baird Group is very large. They were the low bid on that city of Hull sale from yesterday. They also received bids from BOK on the second page, a New York firm bidding on a little Iowa town. You gotta love it. TD Financial, Stiefel Nicholas, and then Northland at the end. I think one thing that you've seen change too versus 15 years ago, there was recent corporate tax reform. Since that's happened several years ago, community banks really are not always your strongest buyer of municipal bonds, particularly C-corp banks that are taxed at the corporate tax level. They do participate, but what's important about competitive sales, it draws in a broader pool of investors, more competition for your bonds, ultimately driving down a lower cost of financing for the city. So I think between you, it's clear you're a priority client to me and to our firm. The experience that I have with the city, being able to get started on day one with the familiarity, I think our firm's I forgot about arbitrage rebate too, that we had helped the city hall staff folks with a year or two ago. Anything else you want to add to recap? I know you've got had a long meeting already, and we would love to answer questions should you have any, and are incredibly grateful for the chance to visit with you.
Any questions from council?
I don't know if I have any questions. I just want to say thanks. I know you had a really short turnaround time on getting this together. So nice job on that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you, Chip, as well, and your team for your presentation. If there's nothing else from you.
Nothing else from us.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I would
Thank
ask for the same courtesy of stepping out during the next presentation.
I think we will not stay, given you're not making a decision tonight, that we'll follow your direction on that. You bet. So we'll just communicate that. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all. Yes.
All right, up next on the agenda, we have a presentation from UMB, Mr. Nathan Summers. And I do appreciate your courtesy of stepping out during that presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be back here with you all and visit with you again. Appreciate the opportunity to follow up. Last time I was here and had a discussion with you all, we were able to kind of talk about UMB's capabilities and the types of things that we do. And tonight I just want to focus a little bit on what kind of sets us apart from our competition and what we do a little bit differently. I'll try to kind of keep my foot on the gas here. I know it's kind of becoming a long council meeting, so feel free to stop me if you have questions though, and I'll certainly answer questions at the end. I'll start on page 5, page with the map on it. Basically, there's a lot of information here, but essentially what I'm getting at is UMB is a Midwest-based firm based out of Kansas City. We've got our public finance and corporate trust offices in West Des Moines. So we're certainly nearby and able to be at as many meetings as we need to be in order to cover the city's business. The next page outlines our public finance team. So I had mentioned at our last meeting that I'm the sole public finance person here in Iowa, but that's not to say we don't have other team members across the country in Kansas City and St. Louis, especially. Our director, Scott Christ, is down in Kansas City, and Reagan Holiday down in St. Louis, as well as Rich Dodd down in Kansas City. So if there were ever anything to happen to me, or if I were out ill or anything like that, couldn't make a meeting, they'd certainly be able to fill in for me. But essentially what you'd get from UMB is you'd have a single sole point of contact. Next page, outlining our public finance group and what we do. I talked a lot about this the last time I was here, but what we do is very much so what the city's used to seeing from firms that it's worked with in the past. Presenting financing structures, cash flows, debt service projections, TIF. We do bond issues. We can do water and sewer, SRF, geos for streets and other items. Kind of a one-stop shop. Next page discusses our underwriting and distribution, and this will be different from what PFM would have presented. Primarily what you're getting from a firm like PFM as an independent municipal advisor is you're getting advice from them. With UMB, we can provide guidance on a bond transaction, on a TIF revenue analysis, but then we're able to actually go out and market the bonds and sell the bonds to investors. And that's definitely one of UMB's strengths. We've got a big correspondent banking business, and so we've got relationships with many community banks around the state of Iowa. 700 across the country, but specifically in Iowa, we've got 235 plus community banks that we do business with and like to buy bonds from kind of that medium size city in Iowa. On the next page, some more about our distribution. Specifically, wanted to point out the last point there that we're UMB has the 5th largest privately held municipal debt portfolio. So we can market the bonds to investors. We also buy bonds for our own portfolio. It's extraordinarily rare that we would ever buy the city of Huxley's bonds on a bond issue. But we do participate in the municipal bond market, and that gives us a lot of insight on what the market's doing and what investors are demanding at any given point in time. Next page, what sets us apart. 3 primary items. The first one being strength of capital, total assets over 72 billion, and the ability to deploy that capital to support our clients' bond transactions. I'll allude to it later on, but especially in volatile markets, look at COVID and what the bond market did in that time, and it was really hard to get market access. Something that UMB is able to do is step in and provide some stability in those cases. Ability to increase the city's investor base. I mentioned all the local bank relationships that we have across Iowa and across the Midwest. We'd be able to utilize that to help the city get the best interest rates that it can. Along with our depth of experience, I've been doing this for over 15 years, and our team is extremely deep and has a lot of experience as well. Next page, outlining a negotiated bond sale approach that we typically utilize. Now, we are registered as a municipal advisor, so if the city wants to utilize a similar or same service that PFM would be likely recommending, where you've got a municipal advisor, UMB is also a municipal advisor, and we can provide that same service. It's a deviation from what the city has done in the past. Typically, the city has utilized an underwriter and worked directly with an underwriter. But if you're looking to make that change to a municipal advisory service, we can also provide that same service. So yeah, one of the things that does set us apart is that underwriting. When you're approaching the bond market, you're going to utilize the services of an underwriter, whether you're working directly with an underwriter that you've hired, or you're going out and bidding out the bonds, you're going to be working with an underwriter in some capacity. Okay, next page, discussing some of the advantages of a negotiated bond sale. And this is typically why for a city with the credit profile of Huxley, this is where we would start, is that local bank involvement. It would greatly increase the ability for local banks to participate at fair market rates. We have to abide by MSRB rules, and so that comes with a fair dealing standard. So we would help ensure the city gets those fair rates. And if local banks can't or don't want to participate at those fair market rates, we can utilize that broader bank and other investor market to be able to achieve optimal pricing for the city. I mentioned marketing and risk mitigation earlier. Really, when you do a negotiated bond issue, the underwriter has time to discuss the transaction with investors and generate demand for the deal before actually bringing it to market. And a lot of times you can achieve a better overall result with interest rates in that way, because you're mitigating risk from the investor standpoint. If you're doing a competitive sale and you're putting the bonds out to bid, you're kind of at the whim of the market on that any given day. And when you approach investors ahead of the bond sale, you're able to kind of build up that demand. Talk about flexibility and stability in volatile markets. The flexibility aspect of it comes with, sometimes investors might value a longer call. Sometimes they might not care if the call, and when I say call, the call is the ability for the city to make early payments on a bond or refinance a bond. And typically those are set at 8 or 10 years. We may wind up in a market where we find out that investors don't really care if it's an 8-year or 5-year call. And if that's the case, we want to be able to put the city into a 5-year call. One of the advantages you have in a negotiated deal is you can discuss those items with investors, and we can bring that feedback to the city. So really, it's kind of an optimal solution outcome in those cases. And I mentioned volatility. When there's volatility in the market, an underwriter can take down bonds and provide support to those transactions when investors are scarce. Benchmarking is a big deal with a negotiated transaction to help the city ensure that you're getting that fair deal. We benchmark on every deal that we underwrite. That's kind of similar to real estate, where you're almost likely to have no apples to apples comparisons in transactions, but benchmarking, we can look out and see what other cities have come to market in the recent past and compare that to the results that the city has gotten. Next page just kind of outlines some of the costs of negotiated versus competitive bonds, the cost of issuance when you bring those transactions to the market. You can see a lot of those costs are pretty similar. The biggest thing that you deal with on a competitive sale is that those underwriting fees are kind of subject to whatever the market is willing to do on any given day. It could be higher, it could be lower, but you're definitely subject to that volatility. And over time, it kind of mediates kind of right around the level that we're looking at here. So in this case, and you can take cost of issuance and you can skew them a little bit up or a little bit down, depending on how you want to make it look. But in this case, keeping most of the variables the same, we're looking at about a $20,000 better deal that you'd get as far as cost of issuance on a negotiated transaction.
The next page discusses underwriting fees that the city has received on its past transactions. I didn't go through and pull them, a long history, but over the last 5 transactions that the city has hired an underwriter directly to sell the city's bonds. The fees have been in that 1.2 to 1.25% ballpark. And in this case, we're proposing to work with the city at a fee of 1.1% of the par amount of the bonds. The next page reviews some benchmarking. I took I think this is the last financing that the city did in the public market and compared it to a couple other transactions that had similar credit profiles that were out in the market that had sold at the same time. In this case, you can see Webster City and Council Bluffs got a little bit better performance than what Huxley got. And that's something that, when we're selling the city's bonds, we would ensure that, those numbers are a little bit more in alignment than that, making sure that, like I said, the city gets that fair deal. Next couple pages discuss professional experience. I won't talk through my biography, but after those bios, just looking at recent Iowa transactions, you can see there a lot of our bread and butter EMB is kind of the similar profile of Huxley as far as size, population, credit, that sort of thing. You can see a lot of kind of medium size county seat type towns across the state. Last page here, in summary, just kind of outlining some of the things that we've talked about. That competitive method of sale, if the city is going to move in that direction, it does deviate from what the city's done historically and how it's related with its local banks. If we're hired as an underwriter, we can capitalize on our local bank relationships, and we always offer the bonds to community banks first, giving them rights of first refusal at those fair market rates. And if they're not able to or don't want to participate, we can move along to other outlets in the market. Looking at the typical issuer of each firm, I know that the firm that had just presented tends to work with a lot of larger metro type issuers. UMB tends to work with issuers that are kind of smaller and growing. Rural issuers, I grew up in a small town playing sports in Class 2A. And so I definitely grew up in a community similar to Huxley. I talked about the single point of contact. I'd be your sole point of contact. And then we talked about costs. The costs can be similar in a negotiated and competitive issue. You can, increase or decrease assumptions to make either one look a little bit better. But the bottom line is really controlling the interest rates the city is receiving, making sure those costs are controlled and that you're getting the best interest rates you can. Any questions?
I appreciate your presentation, Nathan. Our previous firm, we had an agreement or an arrangement, much like you're proposing, but it felt like oftentimes staff had them or utilized them for some as a municipal advisor. Really uncompensated, just kind of went along with that.
Mhm.
Is that consistent with what you're proposing here
Yep.
under your model of
Yep.
you're just going to be the bond advisor, but you're available otherwise?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only way we would get paid is if the city winds up going to the bond market. We customarily do those types of other types of ad hoc analyses
Yeah.
As the city needs, as directed by city staff. And we would certainly provide that for Huxley at no additional cost. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Very much appreciate your time this evening, sir.
Likewise.
And we are not going to be making any decisions tonight. You're
Yep.
certainly welcome to stay if you'd like, but no decisions will be made tonight. So
Sounds good. Appreciate
thanks,
it all.
sir. Move along in the agenda this evening. Item C is 101 Campus Drive. Mr. Scott Renaud, appreciate your patience this evening, sticking with us.
Before Scott starts, I had failed to put the ZBA minutes. I sent those out yesterday, but I did print a copy at your spot tonight in case you missed them on the email last night.
I think you just answered my question a little bit there, Scott. So the minimum setback is 25 feet. As currently proposed to cite it, it would be 13 feet. The requesting the right of way to get to the 25.
Aaron, anything you want to address based out on the ZBA?
Thank you. So I know that Dave had provided the minutes from the Board of Adjustment meeting, and I think some of those are helpful just to read through. As you know, in your code, you have under the Board Adjustment powers, they can issue a special permit with the practical difficulties section. And I know we've talked about that because we revised that code section relatively recently. But if you look in the minutes, you'll see each of the 5 elements of that special permit was addressed by the Board of Adjustment. 3 and 4, if you look at the notes, were the 2 that failed. And so I think that's why the property owner is here tonight to try to find a way around that, because the Board of Adjustment was not able to approve it based on a special permit exception, nor was it viable for a variance. And so now the request is to convert or have the city vacate the right of way so that it's no longer a front yard setback of 25 feet, and asking for it to be converted just to the standard 10-foot side yard setback.
Yeah, to be clear, the city still owns the parcel. It's parcel, not right.
Jeff, do you have any comments for the city's approach? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come up here, so. Let's come up here and start talking, sorry.
I don't. Dave's been working with us on this project. I haven't really been involved in this. I think we initially sat down and we didn't think it was probably a good thing to get rid of right away, but there again, what are we gonna do with that in the future? How are we haven't really looked at all that, you know what I mean? Because we wasn't sure where this was gonna go. So, but Dave's probably been more involved in this than I have.
So as I say, Jeff and Forrest and I met with Scott early on,
Long time ago.
had the discussion. We were kind of opposed to getting rid of the right of way, and that's kind of what brought it to what I'm echoing off of. That's probably what brought it to ZBA. P and Z did look at it. P and Z was kind of recommending that we give a variance, but they didn't have the authority to recommend anybody to give the variance. I mean, they couldn't do it.
That's just not a power that the Planning and Zoning
Right.
Commission has. And so it was right for the Board of Adjustment to hear, but they did not, it failed. They didn't consider it as a variance. It really wasn't a request that was applicable as a variance. So they considered it as a special permit, as a practical difficulty based on the land that was there. And like I said, it failed on 2 of the 5 elements that needed to be satisfied. I think what I would offer, just because I was at the meeting where ZBA considered this, some of their concerns about vacating the right of way were just what's the future use? And I think by getting rid of that, you close some of those opportunities. They didn't really expand on what they thought might occur in that area. The other consideration they had was, are there any utilities or any infrastructure that might live in that right of way, or that would need to live in that right of way at some point in the future?
I'm personally not for giving up the right of way. We already had an issue with right of way situation. And we don't know what kind of development's gonna happen in the future, to the south, to the west. So, and if we do give up right of way, I mean, the building's already gonna be there, and how do you get it back?
Appreciate those comments. Maybe it's a question for staff here, just so I clearly understand. This is I guess we're calling it the right of way. it's being proposed to kind of cut that in half and give half to the Breckies and half to these folks, or?
No, there's no discussion of that. That was part of our original
Okay.
discussion with the city, was that Breckies would get their half and we get our half.
Okay,
And that's probably why we're here anyway. Okay. You're not losing any property here. You have to understand, we're not building in the right of way. We're still 13 feet away from the property. And if it was a parcel and not right of way, then it would be 10 feet and we're 13 feet away. And so you're not giving up anything here, in my mind, at all. All we're doing is changing the designation, so it's not the right of way, so we don't have 2 25-foot fronts, we have a 10-foot high, which we're only 30. You're not really giving up anything. We're not asking for the right of way. In fact, in my letter, what I say is the current, if you ever get rid of the right of way, just give it to the Breckies, because it doesn't help us. If we don't access it, we don't need it, we're not intruding on it, everything is the same. So you're not really giving up. It's just a legal name change.
I appreciate that clarification, Scott.
So Aaron, if we change what he's saying, just change the name, it's not a right of way, we do lose certain control of that. Am I correct?
Well, you still own the property, right? It's just that, you know, a right-of-way designation is typically where you're going to put your infrastructure. There's an opportunity to convert it back, and I think that was mentioned. That, you know, if you later decide that you want the use to be right-of-way, you could change the designation back, but then you've got a non-conforming building because they don't meet the setback requirements.
What's the, apologies for not knowing what the building is that's going to, is it a storage shed? Is it what is, house? What are we doing here? I'm so sorry that I haven't been tracking on this until now.
My name's Joe Kearns. I'm the principal owner of the building. We purchased the initial building in July of 2025 with the look to expand it to something else to serve the community. I'm a father of 10 children. Matter of fact, I had to run out because child number 9 was stranded at the high school, and so I had to make a quick hightail. We have kids ranging from right now junior to a 6th grader, so I can tell what my next 6 years of future is going to be. And the purpose is to start, it's 2 pickleball courts, a yoga studio, there's a gym inside there to serve the community for something that's productive and active. And that's the core that we started with that perpetuates that. The difference between the variants is the second pickleball court. So I own a bus, and I was going to put a truck wash in there, and thought, no, let's serve the community. Let's put another pickleball court in there. So we would have 2 pickleball courts available for play. The yoga studio, there's technically a quote bar in there, but it's more of a smoothie bar for proteins, for the health conscious side of it. And that's what we're trying to promote within the community.
And so you just want to, you're just looking for 13 feet, right? Instead of 25
Oh,
feet.
so you got the schematic right there that kind of demonstrates what that looks like.
So this would be a public facing situation with, I mean, I didn't know if it was a private, personal, you know, with 10 kids, you need a lot of space. I didn't know if it was for.
Sometimes
that,
it's my escape is I think what that really looks like.
This is, will there be a lot of traffic and other things going in there?
No, I mean, you're talking about, and it doesn't show up on this particular item, but the current building is being converted into a gym, a 3,000-foot gym. There's a gym in town right now that's about half that size that wanted to expand, and it all worked out that our lot played a role in there. So there's a gym to the south, a yoga studio on the upper level, and then the pickleball courts. You're not talking about high traffic. That if we end up with 7-8 cars in the parking lot at one point in time, that's about it. But I believe there's accommodations that have been made. We will expand the parking lot back to the north to accommodate such.
So you're looking at public or membership, or it's going to be a community open?
Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I assume, staff, that the zoning is appropriate for this type of a use. I don't know that. I assume it is. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's M1, so it falls within the like recreation use. I can't remember the exact verbiage, but.
And if if the city ever needed to put utilities there, we would still be able to do so. We would have to zone it back, make it a right of way? No, just we could,
Utilities and ground you own.
Yeah.
okay.
And we could, I mean, again, we could designate it as right of way in the
If
future.
necessary at that point.
But if you own the property, you could put in what you need.
Okay. I don't think I have an issue with this.
Yeah, sorry, just one other quick thing is the electric lines kind of form are right on the property line. So anything that you're gonna do is gonna be on the other side of that anyway, within your property. So that forms the limit. And again, you can do whatever you want. When we originally went with staff, we were talking about reversion. We're not talking about reversion. We want you to keep the property, include it with the park, use it however you want. But the reality is, I don't think it's gonna be a street. It's gonna be some sort of other use. And you still have to deal, just as we have to, you have to deal with the electric lines that are already there. So you're not gonna, you could move those, but most likely you're not. There's no reason to extend water unless you wanted to loop it, and you could do that through your parcels. There's no reason to do sanitary because it's already on West Railway. So the only thing you could conceivably, from the city standpoint, ever do would be extend water lines. And I don't know that that makes sense. I would probably not do it there. I'd do it some other place, but that's the only thing you need. Unless you were gonna do a street, but I don't know that you want to spend $1 million for a street that basically is one block. Yeah.
I'm looking at the aerial satellite view of the map here, just kind of the overall site. It doesn't have a north-south sidewalk along Campus Avenue. Is that part of this, or would we, I know we've gone through all this sidewalk infill and all this stuff and
So if you leave it as right of way, then sidewalk would be required to nowhere
to a bridge
that is not handicap accessible.
Right.
So we would certainly ask for a waiver. If you change it to a parcel, the sidewalk thing goes away.
For that part.
That side, yeah, there's already a sidewalk out front.
Yep. On the north side or the
Right.
west side of the property. Okay. I'm just. We can't use that bridge as a pedestrian. We can't really be on it. We can't, should we take it down?
So. There was discussion.
Well-
They had.
Wait a minute.
A lot of people come to. So we had discussion, I think it was a couple years ago, if I'm correct, Dave. And there was a lot of people coming to protest that.
But it becomes a liability for the city.
Yeah. It becomes a.
Yeah, there is historical history with that, some historical significance with that bridge, but yeah, the deferred maintenance on that has been extended, deferred for sure.
That's a kind way to put it.
Well, and the reason I asked that, if right, are they going to, do we need to make that? Talk to me.
So with the park area, in the plans that park board had, the trail going through there, so there would be possibility of access coming to, the dead end street to the bridge area to connect that. So the northwest or north to the southwest side sidewalk, I think would be crucial play.
That we
don't come down the right of way.
There's gonna be a sidewalk that goes here.
Yep.
So the ADA, it don't matter. Cause we're not using we're gonna take the people from
We may need
over
to
to Main.
barricade that bridge.
We can tear it down, it don't matter to me, but the park's cleared
I mean,
and
it's
the
just,
path's there. I mean,
just done, if
Right.
we're gonna have a park on the north side, Railroad Park, and we're gonna have a park on the south side, and we're gonna have a sidewalk through, and we have this public gym facility on the south side, that's now going to be an extra draw. Some people may take, one would think, the shortest line between 2 points
Of the bridge.
and try and go over the
I was
bridge,
just making the
so.
point of
Yeah.
the sidewalk of the right of way there on the west side of that property. Of his
If
property.
if it's still right away.
I'm just saying, if we gotta put sidewalks everywhere else, I mean, be a good time.
I just want to make one comment. If the city does change this from right of way to parcels, I'd recommend that any utilities that are in there currently be made easements so that 20 years from now, the city decides to sell those parcels, the easements are there underlying and we're not trying to remember what's there and what's not there and miss something.
Yeah, get them up record now.
Yeah.
I would just like to reiterate, are we prepared to say never? Because I don't think that, you know, if you do take out this bridge, I don't dispute your evaluation, but we didn't have an engineer tell us that it's gonna cost us $1 million to put a street in there. So that's my,
Do we have any other buildings in Huxley that violate your exceptions to this? So, for instance, if we took this to a parcel, brought it back to a street, worst case scenario, the building's closer than the 20 feet setback. Do we ever have any of that else in Huxley that we deal with? Or is this the only building that would ever be in Huxley that would be in violation of the setback?
I mean, I don't have any personal knowledge, but in every town I've worked in, there's always non-conforming buildings.
That's what I'm.
So I would be surprised if you don't. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't, and I said this to Scott at the ZBA meeting. I mean, I don't like the idea of making this conversion just to get the building up and then converting it back. I don't like that as a precedent. But I mean, I think if there's certainly isn't a proposed use at this time, and that's a decision the council wants to make, and then some future council changes their mind, I can get behind that. I just don't want that to be the intent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the newer part, but probably in the older part, there are some things. A good example, me getting the easements for the sidewalks on East Fifth over there. That small shed, it's not really garage, is right on the easement line, so. Problem is I can't really, I'm purchasing right away instead of going easement because it's hard to kind of trace. That's the hard part with easements. Because everybody comes back and says, well, why is that on my property? And then if you can't get it recorded and they can't find it, then we're right now to the point where I think I'm buying right away again. Because we can't get it cleaned up, so. But there's some of it you just can't fix. We can't extend that and move that shed, but we're gonna try to clean up the best we can. So there are issues in the older part of town that's would be difficult to deal with, so. Yeah, but I'm sure we don't go look for them, but I'm sure there are some, so, especially in the older parts, you know, so. Non-conforming lots, and everything else with the newer stuff, so. I appreciate that was more my thought, is we probably have some of this out there, and I'm not advocating that we create more. But we don't currently have a situation. We don't currently know what we're gonna do with that, and I'd hate to say, well, you can't have any growth because 30 years down the road, we might change our mind. If we have that option to change our mind 30 years down the road.
For what it's worth.
You still own it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor.
Nope, you're good. For what it's worth, if I'm interpreting the assessor site correctly, certainly Campus Avenue up to about where the turn-in is for the Breck storage facility is right away, but everything north of that, the bridge and everything north to the railway are parcels. Is that your belief currently?
Yeah.
Okay. So this would be effectively matching what's north.
My understanding.
If we do that. The adjacent property to the west is here. It is a work session. I wanted to make sure I extended the Breckies an opportunity if you had any comments or concerns regarding this.
We don't have any concerns with that. We come here and, what we put out is great in our mind. When that was up for sale, I was like, oh, I hope it's gonna become a something I don't record and everywhere. So we're all for the building. I know people have asked, well, will it block your view or whatever, this big building across the street? And since the city had cleaned out that part last year, there was a lot of nice trees there. And that was a nice view, but now that's all gone and the trees won't grow back for 30 years. A nice building right there would be a better view, you know, and just kind of block it from, you know, and the daycare there and stuff. So no real problems with it at all. We're here to kind of support them.
Appreciate your comments this evening. All right, what additional questions does council have here? Or comments? Ultimately, I need to give staff direction on how to proceed. There's not a resolution before us tonight, but it would be helpful to be able to give them direction. If I can't, I can't. If you need additional time to consider this, visit the site, etc., certainly that's your opportunity as well. Any feedback?